I'm Tim Riley, Special Advisor to the Board of MAST and also the Head of Corporate Affairs. The latter post, I'll explain my function in that in a while. I've been asked by the Board of MAST to talk to you all today about 4 areas of our business which are critical. Firstly, I'd like to go over the organisation chart that was issued the other week by Phil Batty and repeated on camera with Steve Bayliss here in Stansted. Secondly, I'd then like to talk a little bit about our transit business, both in Nigeria, West Africa and Indian Ocean, and then move on to the strategic development of the company and the diversification route that we are considering to take. Following that, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the contracts, your contracts as security contractors, and why those are changing and the benefits that we hope they will give to you. And then finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about personnel changes to reassure you of the direction of the company and that how we continue to grow and that how you are the most important part of our business going forward. So firstly, the organisation chart. You've seen this last week when Phil Batty was over here in Stansted and gave a presentation to staff, which was followed by a recording by Steve Bayliss along the same lines. So I'm here today to reiterate some of the major points of that organisation chart and to explain why that leads into strategic changes in the direction or reflects strategic changes in the company and personal contracts for employees, especially contractors. There's 3 main reasons for the organisation chart changes. Firstly, legal, that we are required for tax reasons to make decisions in Malta outside of British waters, as it were. And therefore senior management has to be A, physically present in Malta, and B, has to be seen to be making decisions there, business decisions, financial, commercial decisions. And therefore that is reflected in the organisation chart to a large extent. Secondly, we are looking at a diversification strategy and new business development. And a lot of that, because the decision making about that is made in Malta, that too has to be reflected in the organisation chart. Overall, what this is really saying is that MAST is becoming a far more complex organisation with layers of junior, middle and now senior management in place. This is client-driven and it reflects what the client wants us to do around the world for them in terms of the services that we provide. Secondly, whilst doing that, we do see other opportunities to expand and grow the business. All of this means that we have to reorganise the organisation in so much as this then can allow us to carry these activities out. You'll notice therefore that some of the board directors, Chris Kelly, Phil Cable himself, have now come onto an executive position, of which there are now 6 on the board. And that's again to reflect the complexity of the business that we're involved in, especially Chris Kelly looking at legal issues, and also the higher risk areas where there's also the opportunities, but in new business development where we have to be absolutely sure legally that we are watertight and not against any sovereign countries' rules and regulations or laws. But with this, we hope that once you begin to understand the organisation chart and you've had time to look at this with your HUGGARDs, that you begin to understand your responsibilities and the authority that you are actually being given. I should add that the responsibility remains with the board and the executive directors, but obviously you have been given the lead, the opportunity and the authority to make decisions yourself on the ground, which we hope is something that you will all grasp and make best use of. We also understand that with this organisation change and what I will talk about later in terms of what is required of all of us in the company, that the new positions, responsibilities and some of the roles will require further training. And HR, along with business development and other people, are looking closely at what internal training we require. Now, this may be as simple as presentation skills, it may be more professional skills such as project management when we work with the defence sector, and it may be as simple as report writing as the business becomes more complex and we tend to move to more service-orientated business. So, what business are we in today? Well, one can argue, and I often talk to the board about this, are we a logistics company that happens to be in the security industry, or are we a security business that is increasingly in logistics? And the best example of that is our present businesses at the moment. Our 2 most important businesses are our transits, both in Indian Ocean and West Africa. And you are all aware that we have this target of 100 transits that we are trying to complete at the moment. This is very much client-led, though, this business, and the reason that we're in West Africa, for instance, is that many of our Indian Ocean clients have been pleased with our service and our delivery and have asked us to provide a similar service in West Africa, which some of you will be aware is very different and a very difficult region, but is something that we're addressing right now. So what are the factors in the transits, and how are we trying to achieve this aim of 100 transits? Well, behind the scenes, there's a lot of work going on. Outwardly, it may seem that it's slow, but it's actually there. We have a sales team in place now. We have a marketing thrust going on to see how best we can sell at a competitive price. We have the transit management system coming in shortly, which will actually make our system more efficient. We're looking at the training of our personnel to see if we can get the best out of them at the best price and in the most appropriate part of the world. And we're looking at partners in places, potential partners in places like the Philippines, over in Sri Lanka, and possibly in India as well. At the same time, we're looking at how we could expand our presence in perhaps places like Singapore, and what role that IT, along with the TMS system, could play to help us do that. We're looking at which personnel we select for these roles, and we're looking at, for many of you here, in-country managers, what you could contribute to this further so that we can maintain this business. So there's an awful lot going on. And to relate that business, for example, to the organisation chart, you've seen Steve Bayliss is now appointed as the general manager. And this should give you an idea of why we need a general manager. I've just mentioned in those transits everything from setting up offices to technical application of transit management systems to training opportunities to setting up partnerships with third parties. And this is a complex business that needs an overall understanding and general management of our business. If you look then at Nigeria, we have a lot of significant challenges there. There are a lot of opportunities as well, but essentially this is where we look at the company to say whether we're a logistics company or a security company. Clearly we are a security company offering services, but in Nigeria of all places the challenge is one of logistics and not of one of security. And to that end, what we need there, and we have set up across the company, but with specifically Nigeria in mind, are various risk committees, of which you've heard about, and working groups. The working groups look at the type of challenges and opportunities we have, recommend to the line managers and eventually to the board whether we invest there, and the risk committees then look specifically at a certain stage when this is becoming more than a lead but an opportunity. They look then at the actual commercial, financial, reputational, political, economic and all the rest of it, operational side of this opportunity to see whether we can invest in it. The problem with both of these businesses, or the challenge we face, is that because of the worldwide recession, there is a dearth of vessels moving around the world that there were, say, 3 or 4 years ago. It has been massively reduced because of the world recession. Coupled with that, the business is now, our transit business is now becoming commoditized. So we are in a price war, which we are trying to avoid, but we are still trying to deliver a very good service with additional add-ons like our research and analysis, like Yellow Brick, offers like this at a competitive price to try and maintain margin and our marketplace. But it is only sensible of the board and right of the board that we look at how else we can grow our business. Where else can we find growth in MAST? Where else can we find businesses that have a higher value? So in other words, we work just as hard, but we're actually getting more value out of the business. We also need to look, when we do this though, not at short-term opportunities, but whether the business that we move into in terms of a diversification strategy alongside our incumbent business, transits, whether it is sustainable and whether it has got scalability. Because if we are to invest in it, there's no point investing in it if we can only scale it up to a certain size that is not really worth our time, or that it's no longer sustainable, the market changes, and therefore we have wasted the investment. So in terms of growth, it has to be sustainable, it has to be scalable, and it has to be a business in which we can transfer our present skills into it successfully. So one of the things that we are looking at is whether we can possibly move from the sea to the land. We are a sea-based security company, but a lot of the skills we have and a lot of the opportunities that are appearing now are on land. So a lot of the board's time is taken up by looking at what skills we have in MAST, what opportunities are being presented by our clients and potential clients, and whether we can make the transfer over to supply a similar quality service, professionalism and integrity onto land, which we already provide at sea. So we are becoming quite service orientated now. We're looking at higher value business, which obviously often is consultancy driven and is giving advice to people, but is sometimes better paid and has less liabilities associated with it. So we are also, as well as that, being service oriented, moving from sea to land, but not at the exclusion of sea, but as well as to land. We're becoming, or we're considering becoming, an integrator, where we bring various services together. So in ports, for instance, we may go in and do an ISPS survey, follow that up with Richard Battrick and his EOD team to look to see if there's any ordnance there, especially if this is a country that has just come out of a war, followed by a security review of the port facility, and perhaps further down the line bringing a partner in who is supplying equipment. So we're integrating services, we're giving consultancy advice, and we're moving into areas where there is a greater return on our investment of time and money. So the examples of this in terms of the businesses, to make it clear, is, for example, training. Training, we're just about to hire a new guy out in Oman to head up our training, who will oversee our work in Malta, our range at Gozo, and obviously our great business at the moment we have, which is the BAE contract with the Royal Office of Oman for providing Coast Guard training. But the key of this is that we're moving from pure training into what is often described as the transfer of knowledge. The transfer of knowledge is from ourselves culturally to another country or organization that does not have that knowledge. The vehicle by which we do this is training. But this is higher paid work for us, and therefore is something that we are looking at and chasing more of it after the early success we've had so far with the Oman contract for the Coast Guard training. In terms of yachts, we're re-examining how we look at yachts, how we market yachts. Traditionally, we've looked very much at the technology side, and Andre has done a great job and continues to do so at putting high technology into our yachts and surveillance and on the security side. But we're seeing how we can actually break our yacht business out into other services that we could offer. Health and safety, technology other than surveillance, insurance, kidnap and ransom, bodyguard duties, etc., etc. But we must remember that in this area too, we're moving into a service area. The yacht business is about high net worth individuals. And it happens that one of their toys is yachts, which is what we provide. But we should not forget that we are looking at high net worth individuals and how to service very, very wealthy people. And as such, we need additional skills and training to make sure we provide the service that they require. EOD is similar, that we obviously do our work in EOD of technical nature. We have a contract in Baku in Azerbaijan at the moment, an offshore Richard 1. But he's also at the same time, his team is a member of a team that is advising the United Nations on new regulation for offshore EOD. So again, we're moving into the consultancy, advisory and higher paid work in due course. In terms of compliance and regulation too, we not only see this as critical to our business, because that is where our integrity and our professionalism is embedded, in that we work only under the strictest guidelines and we apply all regulation and compliance matters rigidly. But we're also now in one of the ISOs being invited in at a later date as part of the pilot study, which reflects our professionalism and the fact that we are a leading thought leader in regulation compliance in the maritime security industry. So that is where we're moving. That is where the growth is coming from. That's how we are doing it. We're re-examining each of our individual businesses and seeing how we can add value to them, how we can move into the service sector where we get greater gains and where we can see sustainable and scalable work for the future for all of us. So with regard to new business development now, specifically, we've hired a new manager, Tim Clifton, who's had 20 odd years of oil and gas experience in the African continent, and he has come in to see whether we can chase strategic opportunities as a method of diversification in Africa for industries such as oil and gas, infrastructure, power generation, ports, and the like. This will again change how we work, in that those sort of projects of that scale require us to be able to diversify the risk and reduce our liabilities in order to provide a service. So you will see that we now have to work more closely, or look more closely at possible alliances, to work inside consortia, and to work with allied industries as corporate social responsibility, health and safety, environmental aspects of oil and gas, and even a little bit of nation building, and of course training. And this reflects the nature of the oil and gas business in particular. So we will be following that keenly. Tim has already got a list of targets in various countries that the board will be making a decision about soon as to whether we follow them up in terms of some investment, to look to a partner to provide a service to the oil and gas industry. So quite exciting stuff for us there. Additionally, we are looking at offset contracts, which some of you may have heard of, and these are traditional deals made between defence companies and host governments which they supply, whereby some of the revenue is reinvested in the form of training in this case, and they're called offset the expenditure of the host country, where they want training supplied to them. And in this case in BAE they were asked to provide security training in the maritime sector, and so we were selected to provide that training. This is great business for us as it gets us close to a host country, to the strategic needs of that country firstly, and secondly it helps us to build a relationship with the defence sector, which is a critical industry as it is for us going forward in terms of being able to supply high technology, a very well-educated management team, commercially educated management team, and a lot of resources that we may be able to team up with in time to work with on strategic projects such as oil and gas and major infrastructure. The third part I'd like to talk about is contracts for our consultants in the security side. As a result of what I've been talking about, the change in strategy or the evolving strategy and the need for a reorganisation of the company to reflect that strategy, obviously personally at your level your contract will also be altered. Hopefully you will see this as a positive move. We certainly do. Your contracts now have migrated originally from the UK to Malta for reasons which I explained from the point of view of UK tax and our need to be in Malta so that we can legitimately not incur those taxes. And for you now, we're moving to Ras Al Khaimah. Your contract's moving to Ras Al Khaimah offshore, so that you are tax-free. It's your responsibility now, of course, to look after your own tax affairs, and where the terms of the contract have effectively changed, as you know, from 2 months on, 1 month off, and no payment for the month off, to 3 months on and 1 month off, but you are paid for that month off as well. So hopefully we have 6 variants of this contract, including permanent employees in terms of security contractors for things like Oman, the Coast Guard contract. We have general security employment, and we have, of course, the in-country manager contracts as well. So this, from our point of view, is a sign of our intense need and respect for you, our workers, that are actually at the coalface, and to make sure that you are adequately remunerated, and that from the contract point of view, that with this new contract we hope that you'll be able to overcome some of the difficulties that we're aware of, such as trying to get a mortgage in the UK or get a loan off a UK bank. Not being an employer was very difficult to do it. In this way, we hope with the Ras Al Khaimah contracts that you will have more success in that way, and at least you'll be, your family and yourself will be more happy when you're abroad on operations, knowing that you actually have the bank on side and a mortgage in place. So lastly, I'd like to talk about some of the comings and goings of the company, which I think is the fourth part of this, and hopefully brings it to a logical conclusion of you see a strategic change in the company in terms of diversification, how we maintain our core business of transits, how we're looking at new business development in other parts of the world in strategic industries, and how we're going to work that in terms of alliances, partnerships, how we cover that risk with risk committees and with working groups, how that then is reflected and needs to be reflected in the contracts that you have and what is expected of you and what hopefully you can give to us and what hopefully we can in return give back to you. And finally, I'm sure you're aware of the comings and goings of some staff. Well, having heard what I've just said about how the company is developing, I'm sure now it's more sensible and logical to you. You can see the logic of how people are leaving, as we need different skill sets to get us to the next stage of growth. So David Summerfield, for instance, has gone off to join a competitor, which is fine because he's left under the best of circumstances. He has had a good time at MAST. He's been well trained and we have left on very amicable terms, as have others. And at the same time, we're bringing on other people in line with the developing strategy. A new deputy COO is soon coming in, is on the books, and a new head of training, and a couple of other people as well. So I hope that gives you reassurance that although the company is changing and appears to be going through turbulent times, as the rest of the world is in terms of a recession, actually there is a strategy out there that the board has considered it. We are looking at options, we're selecting the right people, and therefore we have to, as a result of that, change the organisation so that we're outward facing towards our clients, that we can provide the best service we can, and that we're prepared for the challenges and the opportunities that are coming down the track, most of which are very favourable to MAST with the skills that we have and our ability to migrate, hopefully, our business from the sea, but not away from it, from the sea onto the land as well. So to summarise, ladies and gentlemen, this is part of a series of presentations that we will now be giving, which reflects our geographical footprint with people like Mick Hugh out in China and Steve Hull in America, and the different time zones that we work in, and in fact this will probably only get greater rather than less. But this organisation chart is really driven by the strategy, and this is the point I wanted to make today, and that I didn't want people to read the organisation chart, or more importantly the board didn't want you to read the organisation chart in isolation. The key is the strategy, which is evolving, and to a very large extent it will evolve the strategy as a result of our clients' needs. Where we see additional opportunities or where we find we can get better growth, we may diversify, as I've explained. But essentially the organisation chart is where it is right now, but within a month it may well be evolving as a result of the strategy that we follow and our clients' needs. Hopefully, however, what we have got of some permanence is the contracts, the employee contracts, which I hope now are flexible enough that whatever the strategy and whatever the changes in the organisation structure, they more or less will stay the same for the foreseeable future. In terms of this communication, as Head of Corporate Affairs, you will see more of this type of transmission going on in the next couple of years, where we are aiming now with such a diverse business, diverse people in diverse countries, where our internal communications will be stepped up. We have newsletters now every 2 weeks, rotating every month, where we welcome your views. There will be more transmissions of this kind. There are websites being set up, including an intranet service for MAST, where you'll be able to contribute, download information that only you can access as a MAST employee, find out about the company. And I would hope also that in this corporate affairs role, through the marketing and through HR, you feel that you can talk to the senior management here about any concerns or any opportunities that you see. So once again, thank you very much for your attention.